They say there's no I in team, but what if the I is an illusion and there actually is an I in the word team? I'm not here to debate free will, and I'm not here to tell you that you don't have free will or anything of the sort, but what I'm saying is that the illusion of free will, the appearance, the seemingliness of free will is in of itself enough to really give us some sense of understanding the way in which our sense of consciousness really operates. And I think that it's important to discuss this type of topic because I've been thinking a lot about Zeno's paradox recently. And for those that are unfamiliar with Zeno's paradox, it's essentially Zeno, an ancient philosopher slash mathematician, was thinking about how the story of Achilles, like if Achilles shoots an arrow and he shoots that arrow, there are seemingly half points to get to that target forever. Like if you half the amount of the arrow to reach the target every single time, it's mathematically going to go on for infinity, right? So if you half the distance, then there's going to be another half and another half and another half and another half forever and ever. So how does this happen actually? Because eventually the target and the arrow actually collide. So I've been thinking about this in regard to consciousness as well, because it seems like the actions themselves don't exist, but what exactly is the threshold point in those actions then? And mathematically speaking, there is no inflection point in which consciousness actually is awake. Like, how do you know that you're walking in the spirit? How do you know you're walking in truth? Well, you kind of have to observe it in order to really understand if you actually are walking in truth. Like you really don't know. And I'm not here to tell you that you should think a certain way or not a certain way. Again, this is a philosophical, artistic expression of the truth as I see it. Now, look, you might think that what I'm saying is truthful and you resonate with it because there's something deeper on that level, but ultimately there is an objective truth, but it can only be perceived subjectively. And I see the objective truth as there is no objective truth. The objective truth is there is no objective truth. And that is enough to really send you into a whirlwind about free will, right? It's like, well, then how do I have free will? Well, I know I have free will. I have free agency. God gave us free agency. Well, you can believe that, sure. Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with believing that. Like, you can believe that, and that's fine. And there might be a lot of utility in believing that you have free will. And there might be a lot of utility in believing that you don't have free will. But again, you can't really prove either of these situations. It's Zeno's paradox, okay? It's also like Schrodinger's cat, where you don't really know what's going to be happening until you see it. Schrodinger's cat, for those of you that are not familiar, is the paradox where in like 1935, Schrodinger came up with an example to discuss how quantum physics can be determined and how quantum physics actually works. And so he said, well, you can put poison in a box with a cat and it'll go off at a random time. And the only way to know if the cat died is to actually look into it. You don't really know until you look into the box. Well, so what exactly does that mean about this reality? Well, again, mathematically speaking, if you can go on forever when the arrow hits the target, if you can half that forever. I think about this with Bitcoin, for example. Bitcoin, there's 21 million Bitcoin that will ever be, right? And it is halving every like 4 years, roughly speaking, right? And so that means that there are mathematical structures and boundaries in the existence that are true, but within those mathematical boundaries, they're infinite. Like the amount of possibilities are infinite. So the thing that we run into then is that if the mathematical probability is all that exists, well, then how are you to say that you know for a fact you have free will? This is like God's greatest prank, as far as I can see it, is the illusion of free will, or the the perception of free will. Like, something that I've been thinking about recently is perception psychology. And I've been determining if, I don't know if there's actually a thing as perception psychology, but I had a dream about it. And then I had, in that dream, also, there was a villain in the dream, and he like tore up a theater. And he tore up the theater, and then he says, "Now I shall go to the well of justice." Very strange thing for a villain to say in a dream, right? But the thing is that was, my unconscious expression of what I perceived to be happening in true time, not real time, because there is a difference between real and truth in the Regal timeline theory. For those of you that are Regal change old timers, you know exactly what I'm talking about here. And there's a lot that goes into it, but essentially it's describing the structure of time, because as soon as you start to believe that time actually exists, the possibility to experience eternity, it closes for you. But when you understand the structure of timelines within timelessness, and you no longer see time as linear, then you're free. You're free from the perception of linear time. And this is why I think there's so many religionists and dogmatists and also ideologists who are trying to, create gender politics, or identity politics, rather. I guess gender politics too. But again, it's like there's no end to these things. There's no end. But if something has no end and no inflection point, well, then how do we know that the target actually hits? Like, how do we know that you are actually a real walking of the spirit person? If we can't really know the inflection point between when you're walking in spirit and when you're walking in the flesh, we don't have an inflection point, but we just know when we know. That seems very strange, right? That seems very peculiar. Well, and it is very peculiar, because you don't really know. You don't really know just how far or not far you have to go. Like, a lot of people will say that, oh, it takes years and years to develop this practice, and to develop your meditation skills or your prayer skills or your prayer life, or you have to do everything to follow these 10 commandments no matter what. Like, otherwise you're going to burn in hell. And you just think about these things, and this is what people genuinely believe. They believe it to the point in which it's real for them. And the reality is not necessarily the truth. But the truth is always going to have a sense of reality. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, the realness of the world, for example, like, think about this. Okay, this is something else that I was thinking about recently as well, is the suspension of belief. Okay, so the suspension of belief, there's a bunch of different types of paradoxes that we can look into. But the suspension of belief, for example, the suspension of disbelief, rather. So think about this, right? Whenever you're watching like The Hunger Games, or you're watching Star Wars or The Lord of the Rings, like, obviously this is not happening around you, right? Like, we know that this is a fictional story and a movie playing on a screen, right? Like, we know that, but it doesn't negate the fact that we feel the emotions of the characters, right? Like, Gandalf, for example, is a great character that everybody can relate to some degree. Like, everybody loves Gandalf. I don't know anybody that like, oh, Gandalf sucks as a character. I have no clue. And if you ever did think that, I would be a little worried for your soul and your soul health. But I've never heard of this before, right? And the reason I bring up The Lord of the Rings is because I've recently finished a structure on transformation psychology for the RCA, the Regal Change Academy. And I've been really focused on doing the structural psychology for this class. And so I'm not teaching it per se, but I've got all of the mechanisms that you need to understand how to correlate and contrast the myth of Lord of the Rings with transformation psychology in the class. So that's available now. And one thing I was thinking about with Gandalf, for example, is like we can relate to these characters. We can seemingly relate to these characters. We can seemingly have the audacity to really feel an emotional connection to these characters. But that takes a suspension of disbelief. That we know wizards in the way that Gandalf is, or orcs or whatever. Like we know these things don't really exist, right? Like they exist in a reality, like a multiverse, perhaps, for all intents and purposes, but they don't exist in this physical plane that we are living on. So who's to say that your free will is not necessarily a suspension of disbelief? Maybe your free will is a suspension of disbelief within the Zeno's paradox. You know, because that's the thing, right? How do you know if you're truly awake or not? If there's an infinite amount of possibilities to get to timelessness, and in that sense of timelessness, you don't really know it until you know it. It's difficult to say, but this is why it's one of the best things ever. It's one of the reasons why it's God's greatest prank, and this is one of the reasons why this is all just a show, and this, to me, formulates the evidence, I would say, the data points needed to have the understanding that this is a mathematical simulation and matrix that is operating in a very specific type of way. And the only way that you're going to know the truth is if you confront it. I think this is one of the reasons why Friedrich Nietzsche was so powerful in his writings, is because he spoke in aphorisms, right? He never gave you like a clear structure. In fact, it seems like in retrospect, he wanted to be misunderstood. Like he wanted people to really not understand what he was saying, because then they would have to confront it. Because then they'd have to confront the truth in a specific type of way. And that's why he spoke in aphorisms. And I've been thinking about how I want to do that going forward. Like, how do I really want to tailor my message? How do I want to help people confront the truth of their own sense of reality to get to timelessness? Because timelessness and the letting go of belief is the way to get to timelessness. You can believe in timelessness, but does that really make you living in timelessness? Not necessarily. You know, it's like someone said recently to me, this is one thing I really do not like about religionists. They act as if these stories in the Bible are literal truths, to the point in which, you know, they treat them as if they're historical facts. And the only verification that we have about these things is from the scripture itself. We can reference different stories about these stories, but we don't really know a lot of them as literal. I'm not saying that the entire Bible is false. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that the entirety of the Bible is actually so profound that you don't really know just how flabbergasting the stories in the Bible really can be once you realize that not a lot of this can truly be verified. Now, Nebuchadnezzar, for example, we can verify that Nebuchadnezzar was a real king, right, from the book of Daniel. We can recognize that Nebuchadnezzar was a real, quote-unquote, king. And yet, do we know that he actually became a beast for 7 years? Can we truly verify that historically, that he became a beast for 7 years? You know, or maybe is that a parable, or is it to be taken as literal as people are claiming it? And if so, then what exactly does that mean? Like, again, do you see people like being turned into beasts, or kings being turned into beasts. Now, depending on what that means, right? You know, because you can be like the devil, or you can be like a monster, so to speak. But how exactly does that mean? You know, because the way that the King Nebuchadnezzar is described in the Bible is that he became a beast, like on all fours, right? So, and he like ate off of the grass and in the wild, right? Something like that. I might be paraphrasing just a little bit, so you'll have to look it up. But the point is that we don't truly know. And that's the liberating part. Like, we don't really have to know. You don't have to know if you have free will or not. You don't. You can act like you do. And if it makes life better for you, great. You know, then that's utility. It doesn't really matter if it's truthful. Now, I'm not saying truth doesn't matter. What I'm saying is that in this context, if you believe in free will, if you have the utmost understanding, like, no, I believe in free will, well, then, I mean, do it until you see otherwise, that it's not going to work out for you. You know, or if you believe, okay, I know I don't believe in free will. Free will is false. I hate free will. Whatever the polar opposite of that is, right? I mean, is your life becoming better or worse because of that? What I see is that principles and values are meant to be embodied. And if you just embody those things, the thing that you want to have happen is going to happen. So whether it's chosen for you or not, whether you choose free will, you know, nobody really knows. You can't prove, like, oh, I can prove to you that I have free will. Like, no, you can't. No, you can't. And you can't prove to me that you don't have free will either. But I can just accept that whatever you believe is going to be what you believe. I mean, I can't change what you believe. I can't change or force anybody to believe or not believe anything. But what I can show you are data points and paradoxes and certain types of ways of viewing the world that reshape your structure. And if you are capable of letting go of your beliefs and suspending your belief rather than your disbelief, suspend your belief for a second rather than your disbelief, and see where the paradox takes you, well, then maybe you might change your perspective, and maybe you might be confronting the truth a little bit more, which I think ultimately is the aim here that I want to have. Like, I want to have people confront the truth. And that's one of the reasons why I create, you know, these classes in the RCA, as well as my Godlike Mastery and my one-on-ones. It's to give people the opportunity to confront the truth, not only of the reality or the construct or the matrix, but themselves. Because if you believe in linear time and you don't believe that, and if you believe in linear time and you believe that you are not an immortal soul, then you're literally cutting yourself off from possibilities that could be there that you otherwise wouldn't have seen. So you're, instead of operating in Zeno's paradox, you're actually just you're like the opposite of Zeno's paradox at that point. You're like moving so far away from the target that you think that you're getting closer to it, which, who knows? Like, maybe you'll get a better clear picture of what's happening and why it's happening. But with all that being said, I hope that this message was useful and insightful for you and helped you confront the truth of the existence and the soul of existence a little bit more thoroughly, and forged something new for you. So with all that being said, hope you all stay blessed. Peace. Until next time.